You're telling me you think the Redskins are still in the playoff hunt?
They're not mathematically eliminated, and from what I've watched from the Cowboys and the Eagles this season, yes, the Redskins have a chance.
It makes me absolutely sick.
It's not my fault y'all defensive backs made Ryan Fitzpatrick look like Joe Montana.
Well, that's true. It is not your fault. And let's not bring it up ever again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyways, no, the Redskins are still a threat. You have Terry McLaurin that can go off anytime. Darius Geis had one of the fiercest stiff arms I've seen in the last 5 years last week. I mean, and we don't know whenever Jeremy Sprinkle is going to go off. He either drops passes 1 week or catches 2 touchdowns the next week. We don't know what he's going to do. I mean, Haskins has limited weapons this week, but don't be surprised if they use Kelvin Harmon this week either.
Yeah. Listen, everyone needs to pay attention to this because anytime Dave says an obscure name that you're like, yeah, I've heard of that guy, but he hasn't done anything all season long, he gets a touchdown that weekend. So play Kelvin Harmon this weekend. I'm telling you, if you have Devontae Adams, take him out of your lineup. Put Kelvin. No, I'm just kidding. Never do that.
6'6", 235. He has a huge catch rate. He's able to go up and get the 50-50 balls a lot. Did it at North Carolina State. And there's been more targets growing from Haskins each week. It wouldn't surprise me to see he take some deep shots with either McLaurin or Harmon.
Listen, I actually like the over-under 41.5. That sounds about right. That's a good line to me. The Packers favored by 13 points. I think I would actually take that as well. I like the Packers to cover by 2 touchdowns. I'm streaming Green Bay's defense this week. We talked about that a couple weeks ago as we were entering the fantasy playoffs. If you want to be sneaky during their bye week and pick them up because they were going to play the Giants, obviously you saw what happened in that game. Now they're taking on Washington at home, and next week they're taking on Chicago at home after Mitch Trubisky just looked like freaking Mike Vick last week on Thursday against Dallas. But yeah, we can get into that matchup next week, but I'm not expecting the same type of performance from Trubisky, obviously. But when you talk about this matchup, Dwayne Haskins has been, average at best, below average in my opinion, for the Redskins at quarterback. Terry McLaurin is a desperate flex play only because they will have to lean so heavily on him today. Now, when you talk about the run game, Green Bay Packers are 5th worst in the league as far as giving up points to fantasy running backs. Right now, they're giving up 22.1 points a game. So it all depends on who gets the most work today, right? I mean, the Redskins actually do divvy it up so that Adrian Peterson is talented enough to where he only needs about 10 carries. Darius Geis is only getting about 10 carries a week. But you see what happens when they break off these big chunk runs and they're able to stiff-arm defensive backs who are much smaller and make their way into the end zone. So if you're playing Darius Geis to me today as an RB2, I'd be skeptical. But as a flex play, that's more, obviously the options depend for each team. But I like him to put up, about 10 to 15 points today rather than giving you any type of game-winning week where he puts up 20 points. But I think he and Adrian Peterson are both guys that you can flex today and expect anywhere between 10 and 15 points. Obviously, Adrian's a little bit riskier of a play because he doesn't catch the ball. And if you're expecting the Redskins to catch up today and have to score a lot of points, Adrian's a riskier play because he's not going to get you those PPR points. But other than that, I don't love any of the names. I mean, if you want to talk about a guy like Jeremy Sprinkle, the Redskins have been banged up all year long at tight end. So I don't think you can play anyone today besides Darius Geis, Peterson, and McLaurin, and that's all in the flex today for me on Washington side of the ball.
I will say this. You're in the playoffs. Honestly, if you can find anything out there that has given a parallel production line as the 2 backs, I would play those guys instead. Here's why. If you watch what the Packers defense has done the last 3 weeks, it has very much stiffened up on the yards per carry and the overall yardage that it's giving up to running backs overall. Like, their numbers are still very mediocre because of the majority of their season. But we're looking now, if we're looking at recency again, when we're talking right now, people, everything we're talking about, we're getting away from risky plays. Because risky plays, you're one and done, you're out. This is playoff time. So this is why we're getting into this goofier information. You look at that defense, I don't think with confidence today you can play even those running backs looking at what the Packers defense has done with against teams like the Redskins and even running backs overall. They've stiffened up very much so and forced teams to be one-dimensional, and that's why they're back to getting a lot of sacks, pressures, hits. When they run the ball, this defense doesn't get turnovers. It doesn't get the pressures. It doesn't get the sacks. Lately, the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially the last 2 weeks, it has really stiffened up on the running backs in the run game and force teams to be one-dimensional. So I would be a little leery if you have to play him. If that's all you are, you're locked into your schedule. That I understand that. That's not a terrible play. But I'm saying if you can find somebody that's been giving you equal value as Darius Geis or Adrian Peterson, you can plug them in today because they have a more favorable matchup, even though it seems like it. Just the recency of what the Packers defense is doing, I would go that direction in your playoff matchups.
Well, let's go through them then. I'll give you a couple options and see what you think. Obviously, if you were savvy enough to pick up Bilal Powell, and you're not, you can pick him up. I love Bilal Powell today with Le'Veon Bell ruled out. Le'Veon Bell, that's a great one.
That was awesome.
But
good combination.
I love Bilal Powell today against the Miami Dolphins. I would rather play him over Darius Geis. I think we can all agree on that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what about in Kansas City? You've got that scenario, Damian Williams and Darrell Williams, both likely to miss this game. LaShawn McCoy's been uninspiring. Darwin Thompson got a touchdown last week. Would you rather play Darwin Thompson than Darius Geis today against New England? That's a tough one, right?
I would stay away from that because he's an unproven back. Now if this wasn't the playoffs, you could risk that because that's a high octane offense, and I believe that the Patriots recently there's more and more film about how to get around this all-time great defense and pick it apart. And I think if there's a team that could do that, it can be the Chiefs. But again, we're talking playoffs. That's when I think I would, if I've got other options, again, these are all based on if I have other options. I mean, we're not stupid. If you don't have options, you're stuck. You got to do what you got to do. But if you have other options, I think this is another one. I would put him in the Geis category.
Dave, you're taking Geis over Thompson?
Yes, I am because they used him heavily last week. I went and looked at the stats for San Fran. They had over 105 or 6 yards against us combined on the rushing defense, and Saquon Barkley, I believe, had 4.5 or 4.6 yards per carry. I think Darius Geis is a better play than Thompson.
Okay, now what about in this very same game? Would you rather play Geis or Jamal Williams?
I mean, that's what the Redskins are lacking is linebackers to cover. And Jamal Williams obviously is going to be also used receiving as well as Aaron Jones. But you're getting the same thing, Geis and Peterson, and you also have Chris Thompson now getting more snaps in the past couple weeks now that he's healthier. So you're getting a three-way backfield for Geis and basically taking those catches out, giving Thompson. I'm going to lean towards Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I would say Williams. I think Williams has proved the whole season that when he's given the opportunities, when the game plan affords that to him, he capitalizes.
Okay.
The games where he hasn't done well, we can really attribute it to the play calls, the formations, and the packages that are out there. And he wasn't in the game plan, or he was and they didn't get to that part. But when he gets on the field and he gets his touches, 99% of the time you get good production off Jamal Williams, which is weird because usually in a two-back system it really hinders both and you can't play both. The Packers with this offense this year have proven that both those guys are kind of plug-and-play running back twos. Now, I'm not trying to disparage Aaron Jones, but I think with his weeks of non-production, he's not a running back one plug and play. He's a running back two and a absolute plug and play flex every week, but he's a fringe running back two for the most part. And so is Jamal Williams. They're both, you can plug them in flex and pretty much ride out, and even on their non-productive weeks, they're going to get most of what you're risking at a flex play anyway. But a lot of weeks, they're good, solid running back twos to play. And in the playoffs, I think you can play either one or both. So.
Well, and as
It
two
wouldn't
guys who
surprise
follow
me
this
to
team pretty closely, I'm going to take that as a vote of confidence. You think Jamal Williams is going into this game pretty healthy?
Yes.
Yeah, and it wouldn't
Okay.
surprise me either to see the offense use two running back system plays like they did before, where they had Williams and Jones on each side of the QB. So I mean, look for those plays too, because it makes the offense that much more dangerous, and a lot of that focus is going to go towards Aaron Jones because everyone thinks he's RB1. Well, with that, it's going to give Williams the upper hand, and I guarantee you, LaFleur is probably going to do some tosses or maybe some draws up the middle with Williams, because Williams has patience also too to find that one jump cut. So it wouldn't surprise me to see the double back plays.
All right, well, we've dug into that a little bit. I guess that's a smooth transition to the Green Bay side of the ball. Obviously, people love Aaron Rodgers this week. He's been playing fairly well up to this point in the past couple of games, tossed multiple touchdowns against teams like Oakland and so forth. So I think that in a game where, Washington right now giving up 22.4 points to the wide receiver per game, you've got Josh Norman missing games. He's basically been a healthy scratch, and the Redskins are probably going to move on from him more than likely. I think Aaron Rodgers is a solid play today, even though there's a little bit of wind expected, but it's only reported at 12 miles per hour right now. Nothing that A-Rod hasn't played through before. He's still got plenty of arm. His spiral cuts through the air like anyone else's, in the league. So you don't have to worry about A-Rod and throwing through the wind. But I love him today. He's a great QB1 play. I love Devontae Adams as a wide receiver 1. The rest of it gets a little murkier, guys. Allen Lazard had a big week last week versus the Giants, but it was also limited catches, just happened to be big plays, and they were touchdowns. And then outside of that, no one really stood out to you, MVS or Geronimo Allison-wise. And then, Jimmy Graham didn't really do much himself. So pass catchers.
I will say this quickly, and then I'll let Dave jump in. If you have Devontae Adams, you need to start considering, if you move on this week, you got to go pick up Allen Lazard as a handcuff.
Why do you say that?
Because if you haven't noticed, week in and week out, he's on the field more and being targeted more. And he's picking up more. He's like building every week to, like, the week prior, he's a little more involved, has a little more production. He's a big dude. And he's not just a red zone target. Like, he's got some wiggle to him, and he can get loose, for big plays outside of the red zone. He's just one of those guys where, our playoff system's a little weird because we didn't get the 6 teams in, so we're getting our championship week is week 16 and 17. I don't know how the hell that exactly works. I've never done this before, but
I kind of dropped the ball when it came to the playoffs this year, but we'll fix it for next season.
It's a mistake, whatever. All I'm saying is most
playoffs. Oh no.
Most people have, they're going to have a 3-tier system where they got to move on. And I think if you get to that final championship week, if you look at the matchups they have, he's a guy that you don't want somebody else picking up and then Devontae Adams getting hurt, because he's going to pick up. He's the next guy up. He's the next guy on the trust ladder with Aaron Rodgers. You can see that. So you don't want to be in a playoff scenario where, Devontae gets knocked out. It's not, for the rest of the game. And then some other dude has plugged and played him at a flex and killing you with it, because he's just like last week. We said who is going to be the next target share, and I picked out. That's what it is. And everything with Green Bay's passing offense has to do with the rapport between Rodgers and that receiver. And so when you hear things about Rodgers liking a guy on the practice field, and then you're starting to see with Allen Lazard that his targets and his touches and his production are making – he's not declining every week. He's getting a little better each week. You don't want to be that guy that gets,
That's very interesting. I do love the wide receiver handcuff narrative there. That's a good point, especially with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, the things he does with his number one option and the fantasy impact it has. You think you got Chicago next week at home, which, isn't the best matchup, but a very familiar team. And then at Minnesota in a dome, a team that's been giving up plenty of yardage through the air. So, yeah, you definitely want the number one option for Green Bay in these coming weeks in the fantasy playoffs.